Let's take you to the country's apex court, where the DA's legal representative, Advocate Ngwako Maenetjie, has argued in the Constitutional Court that Parliament currently does not have effective control over setting the VAT rate. The DA wants the apex court to declare the VAT Act of 1991, while certain aspects of it invalid, and to instruct Parliament to amend the law. This is to ensure that the power to set VAT only lies with MPs and not the finance minister.
All right, let's stay with this particular story and take you back just a tad bit for you to understand how we got to this particular matter, because there's so much that has happened with this particular matter. You may even be forgiven for even forgetting how we got to this point. You'd remember there was that dispute, right, that emanated from the proposed VAT hike from 15% to 15.5%. And that was as the finance minister, you'd remember in 2025, tabling that proposal there, that he wants to make sure that he is raising this particular tax and be able to then add it to as part of the fiscal framework. It saw a number of opposition parties quite upset about this particular increase. You remember the DA as well as the EFF challenging this matter in court in order, of course, to make sure that they now want to know who exactly should be the one that is going to then determine whether or not, it's supposed to be an executive branch that adjusts the VAT rate, or is it supposed to be, the work of Parliament? And then you also look at, for example, the High Court ruling in March 2026. The court struck down Section 7.4 of the VAT, Act, and also looking at the fact that you'd remember Section 7.4 speaks about the powers that are given to the finance minister to unilaterally, set the, the set tax setting powers, and the court saying that this is in fact unconstitutional, and the judgment also establishing some of the alterations there to say that the minister simply cannot act alone, and also looking at, of course, the delegation, what has been termed by some as the improper delegation when it comes to legislative power, leaving all future decisions then to Parliament to say that this is where this particular issue actually needs to have as far as the decisions are concerned. And now when you look at where we are, for example, with the Constitutional Court, matter, it's going to be important for finality to then be made in this particular matter. So you'd know that when it comes to value-added tax, for example, it remains the second largest driver when it comes to public revenue generation, especially because around 25 to 30% of tax revenue of total collections, it really is quite significant. So you can only imagine why the fight is where it is. And also, when you look at a number of of course, the VAT rate currently, you think about the fact that it stands at 15%, a number of people still not happy to say that it is quite high, but it also looks at the funding as far as public services are concerned. So it's not just money that is collected. It actually has quite significance as far as the role that it plays is concerned. So let's take you, just back in time. 1991, you'd remember, it was introduced. And when it was introduced in 1991, it was to replace the old general sales tax, right, which was there in place in 1991. So then you go to 1993, it now moves to around 14%. And then 2018 raised to around 15%. Now 2025, we see this big push to have this hike blocked, because the political parties that were blocking this simply saying that the people of South Africa can no longer afford, because for them, they were arguing in part that it's going to affect a lot of people, especially the poor, as far as this is concerned. So this is where the sticking point is currently, as the DA is saying, let there be finality on this particular matter to look at what the courts had to say, the lower courts that is, and now get to this point where there are no grey areas in law, so that in future, this much power is not seen to be in the hands of one person. So that is pretty much where, the fight is currently. So certainly a lot of focus on this particular story, because you'd remember just how sticking this particular fight was. And it was one of those that really in Parliament we got to see a number of those who understood why the minister had to make this decision, and saying that they actually do understand that you've seen it kind of like stagnating over time. So perhaps it may just be time to kind of like adjust it somewhat. But others saying no, the cost of living simply is too high. You cannot afford to then introduce a 15.5% VAT increase, or any increase for that matter. So we'll continue then to bring you more on this particular story, because it has some serious significance and consequences for you and I as well.